Welcome to the Rock Bite, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin True, and today Chris Hampton is back to talk climbing. You can find Chris over at PowerCompanyClimbing.com. You can hear him on podcasts like Written in Stone and the Power Company Climbing Podcast and Breaking Beta. Is Breaking Beta going right now?
It's not. We're
okay,
in
never
between
mind.
seasons.
It'll be back. So you're pretty much like you're the epicenter for climbing audio.
Trying to be.
Exactly. So we're going to hit on a question I hit Chris with about a week or two ago about how much we actually like the sports we do. But then we're mostly going to be talking about Arctic Ascent, National Geographic's new show on Disney Plus, starring Alex Honnold. But first things first, Chris, welcome back to the show, man. It's good to see you again.
Thanks, man. I'm psyched to be here. You're good at catching me in the windows between illnesses right now. So
we got to be getting close to the end, right? We're in February. We're pushing March, right? Spring is around the corner. I
am hopeful. Yeah.
I just got done recording with Patty. That episode's coming out tomorrow on Wednesday, which is the 21st. You and I, this is going to come out next week. So I do like going from the winter guy to the someone who values warm weather maybe a little bit more than Patty O'Connell
totally.
does.
We've seen Patty climb now, so yeah.
It was a beautiful sight.
It was a sight.
It was. Did you watch that episode?
Sorry, Patty. Yeah, I did.
He did a great job.
It was great. I love that guy.
Anyway, man, to kick things off, so I texted you like a week ago, and I was reading your newsletter and listening to your pod, and noticed something that kind of made me reflect on all of our outdoor adventure sports, because they all have this sort of wing of optimization and performance. Hausman talks about this a lot. How he loathes this part of like kind of the outdoor community. You know, the pushing to be better and doing everything as good as possible to be, improve your performance. I've definitely participated that on the endurance side between trail running and multi-sport, mountain biking, those kinds of things. It's clearly a part of what you do as a climbing coach. But then when you step back and look at it, I feel like it begs the question, like, are you trading the joy of why you started this in the first place? So I texted you and just said, hey, man, do you even like climbing anymore?
And I think it's a good question.
Yeah. So what did you come up with?
Well, I think, no, I don't like climbing. I love climbing.
Oh, man. You should have paused a second there. You should have just said no. Don't like it anymore.
And I think what this comes down to is I didn't get into climbing for the sake of the outdoors. That came later. The thing that hooked me was the problem solving and the challenge and this ability of climbing to like fade everything outside of the problem in front of you into the background, or away entirely. Like that was what hooked me on climbing. So yes, I love moving over stone, and I like the being in the outdoor, like grand cathedrals, but that came later. That came as a byproduct of climbing. So I think I'm actually being true to my initial hook of it. And I think as we improve, we get to do the cooler things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like and I'm not saying that in like an elitist gatekeepy kind of way. I'm just saying when you look at the most impressive chunks of rock, they're nearly always the blankest or the steepest. And those are the ones you want to climb. And it's harder and you need to be better. So
we've talked about this before when it comes to the indoor versus outdoor climbing. And I know you've done some podcasts recently about, what you can learn indoors to take outdoors and vice versa. Mm-hmm. But it is an interesting point about when you kind of look at the sports and how this is probably the one of all kind of the human-powered outdoor adventure sports where you really can have it be an entirely indoor focused activity for you the entire time you do it, but then how it can translate into going into the outdoors. And the reason why you might start indoors, like I definitely started rock climbing in a gym because I was doing outdoorsy things and it felt like, oh, this is a way to try this and practice this. But really, of course, you would do this because you're going to go do it outside eventually, right? That just seemed to be the natural connective tissue there. But then to kind of hear you describe it as like, now it's the movement and the strength and the conditioning that you were attracted to first before even thinking like, oh, you can go do this outside on natural faces. That's a really interesting kind of way to look at it.
Yeah, it was just they're like physical puzzles, and you have to not only be well versed enough in the like movement side of it to figure out the puzzle, but you also have to be strong enough and powerful enough to put the pieces together. And for me, the combination of those two things results in doing moves and doing climbs that I find really that bring me joy. That's what they do.
And that's exactly what we want to take into our main topic today, because whether or not you like climbing or you love climbing or whatever it is, but a lot of these lessons were, I think, applied, kind of the way you're describing the activity itself, in the new show that we saw on Disney Plus called Arctic Ascent. So earlier this month, the show was released on Disney Plus. It's a 3-episode limited series marketed on the back of Alex Honnold's involvement. The series chronicles Honnold and a team of other climbers that include Mikey Schaefer and Hazel Finley, as well as a climate scientist and a couple of other guides, as they go on a journey across Greenland in an attempt to collect climate change relevant data and also put up first ascents on a couple of big walls. And that sounds like a lot for 3 45-minute episodes, because the show is a lot. Also, maybe not enough in some ways. So, So you and I both watched all 3 episodes, but before we get into our thoughts on the show, how do you approach sort of the climbing media, in particularly TV or film? Is there kind of, in your mind, is there a right way or a wrong way to kind of bring attention to the sport?
Well, first, let me start by saying, if you love something, I think it's your duty to interrogate and criticize it and ask more from it,
Are you talking about your love of TV and film or your love of climbing?
Definitely climbing here. And TV and film, maybe. I approach it with very low expectations. That's how I approach film and TV about climbing. And I don't necessarily think there's a right or wrong way. I'm just a little wary of trying to combine entertainment and education all in one package. I think it's possible, and when it works, it's magic. But it's such a rare thing that it works. It's far more common that the story falls short somewhere. And I think the only way it does work, like the magic happens because of really good, high quality storytelling. And most of the time that's not there.
I think that applies here. I think
100%.
I think and I don't, look, I'm going to be pretty critical on a few things. It sounds like you might be as well. I've been critical about the climb, clearly on multiple episodes, I think with you as well. I think the thing that gets missing here, and I know this is probably a studio or a media entity decision, by putting known climbers to the forefront of these things, when really it should be the sport that's on display. Because you and I know who Chris Sharma is or Alex Honnold is. And maybe more people know who Alex Honnold is now because of Free Solo. But the sport's engaging, and it is in these beautiful locations, and it's going to bring in the people like you or I who know them, but to most people, it's not going to do anything to kind of promote your show. So I think even leading with the athlete is already kind of a mistake about how these things got to get marketed. But I guess before we even get there, let's just start big picture. What did you think of Arctic Ascent?
Well, I think it fell short on both entertainment and education. And I found myself not wanting more entertainment, but wanting more education.
Yeah.
And I think, when I go into a documentary sort of experience, I'm there to ask critical questions and hope I get answers throughout.
Right.
It's different when you're going into a film, like Cliffhanger. If I'm going into Cliffhanger, I'm suspending my disbelief,
right?
And I'm there for the entertainment.
Yeah.
But in this case, I was looking to learn some things, and I wanted to see climbing documented and see how it was aiding in this climate change quest or quest for data about climate change, and I just don't think I got that connection. I never saw. It seemed like 2 little mini documentaries, both undercooked.
That's probably the best way to put it. And just before we go any further, we're going to be spoiling it. We're going to be talking about specifics. So if you really want to watch Arctic Ascent without knowing anything about it, maybe come back to this episode. I think you're spot on. This easily could have been 2 separate series or 1 individual documentaries. The 2 didn't really support each other or fit together naturally as a pairing because again, to kind of get into it, so you have Alex and this crew of climbers who are in Greenland, and they want to kind of do some big wall climbing while they're also then supporting these climate scientists. And they tried really hard to kind of weave the stories together where you have, we couldn't be doing this climate research without these world-class climbers here to, support us and rappel down into these, caverns or whatever it was. And I don't know. Maybe there's some truth to that in some of these instances, but even if there were, it wasn't enough to support over 2 hours of filmmaking and watching. And it kind of let everything just feel, to your point, felt very undercooked, very half-baked. I think maybe another place to kind of look at it here at the beginning too is Alex Honnold as sort of the focal point of the show.
Yeah.
Alex Honnold has this sort of awkward energy, which kind of feeds why he's able to do all the solos that he does and everything, right? I mean, it's like to put him front and center is sort of like he's the guy leading this, and him from Free Solo, and he's going to lead this group up in Greenland. It just really didn't work for me.
Yeah, kind of same. And I hadn't really looked at it through that lens, but I think you're right. Like I like Alex Honnold on screen. Like I think he's a really interesting character to watch, and knowing Alex before he became a superstar, like I think he's done a really amazing job of being able to be in front of a camera and let his personality shine through. I didn't expect that from him at all. He was so shy and awkward and strange, but he's done a really amazing job, and I think he's this really compelling character, but it wasn't Alex Honnold goes climbing. This was supposed to be a documentary about climbers helping with climate change science and the intersection between the two. And that's where it threw me off. Like if it had just been Alex Honnold goes climbing in the cold, that's a different show. And maybe I still watch it, and maybe it feels better to me just watching him go climbing. I don't know.
No, you're spot on, because you're absolutely right. Like, I don't want anything I'm saying to come off as like I'm critical of Alex.
Yeah.
I think I love all the little things we learned about him in Free Solo and kind of seeing him on, the way he approaches things and his mindset and his pragmatism and all that stuff. I think is really, it lines up so perfectly with the sport that he does and how he approaches it and everything. But when it's like his narration and like he's the team leader and making these decisions, it didn't really work. And I agree with you too. Like, a half-hour show or a documentary on YouTube about this crew trying to climb this 4,000-foot face in Greenland. Oh, that'd been interesting. I would have sat down probably and queued that up. But then to kind of then weave that in, and then you have these really awkward moments where that we have to cut back to the climate scientists who are doing equally interesting things. But there was just no synergy between the two stories.
Yeah. There was one moment that I thought was really great between the two where it's in episode 2, Alex comes out and helps dig the holes side by side.
That was the best part.
I thought that moment was really great.
Yeah.
But that could have been anybody. It didn't need to be Alex Honnold. It could have just been whoever the expedition leader was.
Right.
And that, that brings up its own problem. Alex Honnold as an expedition leader, I don't want him leading my expedition, I'll tell you what, I've been doing research for an episode of Written in Stone, and I read a passage of someone saying about a specific climb. The post before had said, you need these 9-inch cams. These are protection devices you need for a crack that aren't very common. They're really big. And the person below said, well, we just did it, and instead of 9-inch cams, we brought Alex Honnold. And all that means is that he was this really valuable tool for the ascent, for the expedition, and he is that. I mean, he's going to be that on any expedition. But should he be the one making decisions for everybody else? I'm not so sure. His risk assessment and his idea of what's dangerous is so different than everyone else's that it makes it problematic. And we do get to see that in the documentary.
We do, and I think that's also why it didn't he didn't work for me as sort of the face of the show, and then also to your point as like, why would I trust this guy to be sort of leading the group?
Yeah.
I think, and when we get to that point, and look, I don't know how much was maybe played up for drama in the show. I'm sure that some of that is happening, but I'm just sitting there doing nothing but agreeing with Mikey Schaefer, who I feel is completely underplayed 100%. In this whole thing. And is there like one of the most accomplished guys in the world in terms of big wall climbing is Mikey Schaefer, and he's right there, and it's why listen, if you want to play off the back of Free Solo and market it around Alex Honnold, I get that. If I'm in charge of the National Geographic studio, I'm probably saying we need to do that too.
Yeah.
But why can't Mikey lead your leader? He's the team leader. This makes so much more sense.
Yeah, it actually. Have you watched The Last Tepui?
Mm-mm.
It's another Nat Geo film that is Alex Honnold taking a scientist into the Amazon rainforest, and this guy's been studying in the rainforest forever, but the expedition is led by a different climber, Mark Sanat.
Okay,
and I'm not even sure how you pronounce his last name.
I've only
ever seen it in print. But Mark is the clear leader of the expedition, and Honnold is like there because he's a good tool to have on the expedition,
Right.
And that doc actually works really well. It's really entertaining. I watched it immediately after Arctic Ascent because I hadn't seen it, and it popped up on my Disney Plus dashboard, and I'm like, okay, I'll watch that too. And it's what Arctic Ascent wanted to be, but the warm, rainy version, and done way better.
So and I think we both have a lot of criticisms of the show. Well, let's try to get positive for a second. Like, what worked for you? Like, what was when you're watching it? What were the things that you really enjoyed?
Number one, I thought the main climate scientist,
Heidi.
Heidi was fantastic. I liked her a lot. I like the scenes where she shows really clearly what she's looking for and looking at, and she has as much wonder and awe about her as a first timer in these landscapes. I thought that was really cool to see a scientist with that level of appreciation of what's going on out here. And I did like the interaction between Alex and Mikey and Hazel, and getting to see the discussion that happened when Mikey was like, nope, this is too dangerous. I'm out. I liked being able to see that discussion. And there was a moment of Alex showing some real leadership where he was really taking in what Hazel was saying and trying to understand it. And I appreciated those moments. Other than that, I think the landscape is beautiful, but I was totally disappointed by the story. So I got taken out of the things I really liked about it.
I agree. Yeah, Heidi was definitely the biggest highlight. I have questions about why the whole team was on the pool wall, which is the first wall they climbed to get to where they need to go, which we can talk about in a second. But I did enjoy her journey on that, having never climbed a big wall before, and kind of her being uncomfortable with that, and seeing here's a really interesting person being put in this situation, and the positive response to that. It's kind of over a little too quickly, I feel like, 1,500 wall climb, and she's just Jumaring up that rope, and then it's over. But at the same time, that worked for me. It felt like there was a propulsiveness that kind of kept it going, that I was able to kind of make it to the end. However, though, if there had been another episode, I think I probably would have texted you and being like, never mind. I don't think we need to do this anymore. It was very thin on the overall story. It just did a disservice. I think the other thing on the climate piece of it is, almost no, so what? Why are we here? It just sort of at the end, the kind of the big conclusion was hey, the glacier's healthy. We're in good shape now.
That I was sort of did they hire the wrong editing team to do this? Are they on the wrong side of this debate?
I wrote our outline. It's there's morons out there who are going to see that and use it against climate change activists. Well, they said, absolutely, the woman over there said it's fine. Guys. Yeah.
I feel if you're going to construct a story, if you're going to push your narrative in one direction or the other, push it all the way.
Right.
And that didn't happen. on one hand, it's like heartening a little bit, heartwarming to see that this glacier's doing fine.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, it's like, oh, so you didn't need to be here at all?
Right.
Like everything's fine? Let's burn some more fossil fuels. Why not?
Well, yeah, I mean, the third episode, it just becomes about the climb for the most part. And every once in a while, they cut back to Heidi and the other guy that's with her, and they're like, "Hey, wow, look at that glacier." Well, we're gonna set up a time lapse camera, and then it's like, meanwhile, back on the wall, which is the thing we know you came for, right?
Right.
How does that? Do you feel that as someone really into the climbing community, like how? Is there any lingering effects from something like the way that's portrayed, like this sort of, that's so well demonstrated how loose everything was in that wall, to your point, like it was not safe climbing conditions. They're constantly dodging rocks. Hoddle does take a stone off his nose at one point. I mean, I know it wasn't like, I'm sure that's probably reasonably, that happens regularly. But does that portray the climbing world in a negative way? Do you feel like, is there any lasting implications from that?
I think it portrays a really small piece of the climbing world in a relatively accurate way. But it's such a small piece. No one else is ever going to go climb that route. It was
good point.
It was chossy. It doesn't. I mean, the only interesting thing about it is it's a giant unclimbed wall. Now that it's been climbed, knowing that the rock is bad, knowing the problems with it, nobody else is ever going there. Right. Meanwhile, there are beautiful climbs with really solid rock, like Freerider, which Alex climbs in free solo, and you don't have rocks falling off all the time. It's not super dangerous. It's a much safer thing, and I guess they don't point that out, and maybe that's the problem I have with it. Is it's this documentary portraying rock climbing in a very specific way, a very small chunk of what climbing is about, and they never make the point of saying, or at least I don't remember it. Maybe they did say, climbing's not like this most of the time. Right. This is because we're on this Arctic expedition out in the middle of nowhere, and there's a reason no one else has been here before.
Yeah, I guess that just comes back to me the same thing. Like you missed the opportunity. Like it wasn't enough of a climate change kind of documentary, which I also kind of like. Can we move on from just like pointing out the observations? Like, can we get into the solutions about these kinds of things too? I wrote in our outline, it's been almost 20 years since An Inconvenient Truth. Like, yes, we know the problems. More of like we're going to observe the problems. It's like I'm not saying what they were doing isn't good work. I'm assuming they should be doing those things. But in terms of something that's going to be consumed by the general public, I think you need a little more of a so what attached to it at this point for climate change. Yeah. And then on the climbing front, I don't know. I'm definitely not. I'm not you in terms of my climbing knowledge, but I'm also not a beginner, and I had a lot more questions that I feel like I should have coming out of this. Like, wait, why are you doing it that way? Like, what is this? Like, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah. I had a lot of questions too. And I think for me, I walked away feeling like if this had been a climate documentary, maybe I wouldn't even have watched it, but it would have been better.
Yeah, right.
So maybe having the Alex Honnold and the climbing component pulled more people in to watch it. I think I just wish they had used him just to pull people in and then made the story all about the climate change stuff. He obviously cares about this stuff. His foundation does great work. Yeah. But this didn't really show that.
The last question I have too is, and I am curious about this, and if this ever gets to anybody who knows, I would love to hear it. Send an email to myrockfight@gmail.com, because they climb the pool wall, which is this 1,500-foot face, and it's presented that they need to do this because it's the only way to get up to this ice cap. Now, meanwhile, when they pull back in the wide shots, you see this sort of like, it looks like a glacier going uphill next to the wall that you could conceivably skin or hike up. Maybe it's... Okay, let's say there's too many crevasses. It's too dangerous. It's like the Khumbu Ice Fall. We're not going to go that way. Fine. You got to go up and over the wall. So they do that, which I wonder, like, you're taking people who've never rock climbed, right? This is like, they're not rock climbers, and you're going to like make them go 1,500 feet up. That's scary, but you do that. Then you leave all your shit on the top of the wall, and your support team's going to come pick it up. Now, does that mean that the support team's going to come in and climb the wall also? Is the support team going to go up that glacier? Or does it mean that that support team is going to fly in on a helicopter and pick it up? And if it's that, well, what are we doing now? Because you're making a climate change documentary. Meanwhile, you're going on an adventure and having somebody in a helicopter pick up your mess after you. So that is one thing I am very curious about.
Yeah, that part confused me quite a bit because they get to the top of this thing and then they ski off of it, slow skiing, pulling a sled.
Yeah.
So it can't be that hard to just reverse those tracks back up to the top.
Yeah.
And when they ski off of it and they get to the end of this glacier, their support team is right there in a boat. So did you really need to climb the pool wall to get there? It doesn't appear so, unless these guys climbed the pool wall with a boat, which I don't think they did.
Well, and I guess that's back to the beginning question, like, what do you want out of your media? Because, like, that's a hard thing to know. It's one thing to say, oh, we made Madam Web and it didn't work, and it just cost a studio money. This is, hey, we're going to go to Greenland, right? Yeah. And you probably feel like, well, we're going to climb an unclimbed 4,000-foot wall. Of course, there's a story there. And to your point, you don't know what you don't know. And then ultimately it's over to Nat Geo to put the pieces together. Because, these are just athletes, right?
Yeah.
And Alex has found himself in a position where he is the face of climbing. So, of course, you're going to put him front and center. I didn't know much about Hazel other than just seeing things on social media. So I thought she was very interesting. I liked learning about Hazel in this. I thought she seemed like incredibly competent and affable and somebody you'd want to be stuck on a wall with, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
if I'm putting together a team, I want Hazel on that team every single time.
Totally. And Mikey too, probably,
Yeah. And in fact, Alex is, I like the team.
Good team. Yeah.
I'm just not a fan of the way the story was told.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
And that's what I want from the media, Colin. Like, I want better storytelling. I think we're stuck in this era of like, the information is enough, or even pieces of the information is enough.
Yeah.
And we've lost this because there's such a proliferation of information out there. You get to know the things as they're happening.
Yeah.
You can read an article about it, live as it's happening. So we've stopped the actual storytelling. With my podcast Written in Stone, I've had several people say, why don't you reach out to the people who you're telling the stories about? And I'm like, oh, I have. I'm getting information from them. I just don't want their voice in the podcast. Yeah. I want to tell the story. I don't want to relay the information.
Sure.
And that's what we do. That's what people do. And that's what this felt like. It felt more like relaying the information and maybe trying to tell a little bit of a story, but the story just didn't work.
No, and I think this will be a perpetually a problem for adventure sports, right? Because I think, the climb, kind of the same thing. The interesting story there was this incredible, was for me, the camaraderie among the climbers.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
It's 10 people competing against each other, but also showing like rooting for each other, pulling for each other, hugging each other, really getting engaged with each other's lives, and the diversity within that group as well, to show that it's not just skinny white guys running this world, all those things.
Yeah.
But then you get mixed in with Jason Momoa wants to talk about, have Chris Sharma front and center. And also, by the way, I don't fault those guys. And if I'm a studio who doesn't know anything about rock climbing, I got Jason Momoa, and Momoa's telling me that this is like one of the best climbers of the last 30 years. Okay, yeah, put them front and center. That's an easy decision to make, but it didn't work. And I think same thing here. It's like free solo is a one of one. That is never going to happen again on film anyway. Maybe somebody will repeat the feat. But, I mean, you don't try and recreate free solo.
Yeah.
Even if it's with the guy who was in free solo, right? And I think that's where it got lost here too. If you want to have, here's the guy from free solo going on another adventure, great. If it's here's the climate change thing, great. But it just didn't quite mesh together. So,
kudos to them for trying to tell this more important story.
Yeah.
I just don't think it happened. And I'm going to give you some homework to watch.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you have a palate cleanser?
Tepui.
What do you got?
I think you have to watch The Last Tepui. It was, it's the better version of this.
Any other climbing thing for the audience? Anything they should watch? It's a good representation of the sport that you feel like is engaging with someone who's maybe not on the inside of the climbing world.
Definitely cliffhanger.
Fuck yeah, let's go!
If we just want entertainment, absolutely watch cliffhanger.
Well, we can wrap it up there. What is happening in the Written in Stone Power Company climbing universe these days? What's coming up?
Yeah, I think, well, right now at Power Company, we're spending a few months really exploring movement and skill acquisition, trying to examine it from every possible angle, because we don't like climbing at all and we want to get better at it.
And we love it.
Yes. And I'm trying, this is basically me doing my doctorate in movement acquisition, skills acquisition in public.
You had a baseball guy on this week. That was cool.
Yeah, Boston Red Sox skill acquisition expert. I've spent some time learning from him, Rob Gray, and he's really fantastic. So, and there'll be more of that sort of thing. And then at Written in Stone, we just examined one of the biggest controversies in climbing in the 90s and looked at it sort of through the lens of how it relates to us as a community and what we get wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then our next episode is looking at Freerider, which was the route Alex Honnold free soloed. And that is also going to be another examination of the things we do as a community that may not be serving us as well as we think they are.
All right. Well, before you head out on the next podcast, please make sure you subscribe to The Rock Fight by hitting that follow button wherever you're listening to us. That's the single best way to support the show. We'll be back later this week with more ideas that aim for the head. The Rock Fight. It's a production of Rock Fight LLC. Chris Hampton, I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening. And here to take us out is the man, the myth, the legend. It's Krista Makes with the Rock Fight fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.
Rock fight, rock fight.